Faustina Kowalska wanted to wear what was known in her day, in the early 1900s, as a hair shirt. What is a hair shirt? It's sort of like a garment with thick hairs that causes irritation to the skin. It's annoying. Every movement you make, you feel being pricked by these little hairs. And she wanted to wear it and to mortify herself to help save souls from hell. But she was also suffering from tuberculosis. And what did Jesus say? Go to your superior and ask permission first. She goes to her superior, who says to her, unless you have the strength of a colossal, I will not give you obedience to impose this penance upon yourself. She was crestfallen. She was sad. She goes back to Jesus, and what does Jesus tell Faustina? I received more glory and atonement of sin from your obedience to your superior than if you had wore that hair shirt of your own initiative for 9 days. See the value of obedience? And yet, the vast majority of Catholics today are disobedient to the church, and they're giving you a false narrative. Do not listen to them. Listen to the church. Do not listen to individual blogs that disobey the magisterium. When you do, you deserve to be deceived because you know better. You've been catechized and you've been exhorted by the saints, by the church's councils, and by her theologians obedient to the magisterium.
Thanks for tuning in to Everything Catholic again, where I share clips of Father Iannuzzi with you with his permission. And this time it's going to be on something that's very, very important, which is the virtue of obedience. It's rather long, and I hope all of you will learn a lot from this.
Loyalty of intellect and will to the normative expression of our faith, namely sacred scripture, to sacred tradition, and to its articulation, or the articulation thereof, in the magisterium today, the teaching office that Christ instituted when he, in Matthew's Gospels, told the apostles, because the Pharisees and scribes occupy the seat of Moses, obey them in everything they tell you. Now, admittedly, at the time of Christ, the sacraments were not yet instituted when giving these words to the apostles. But the office of teaching has existed since the time of Adam and Eve to this very day, but was sacramentalized with the institution of the sacraments, including holy orders. Okay? Holy orders. Now, this is an important sacrament because upon it is established the entire structure of the church. Now, some of us may overlook this. In fact, many today overlook this, including Catholics, so-called Catholics. Many people out there today are baptized Catholic, but do not really practice their faith. In fact, the vast majority do not practice their faith. And yet, they believe they have a pulse on the truth, while ignoring the sacraments, including the sacrament of holy orders, upon which is established the whole foundation of the church. If you really look at it, without the hierarchy, which comes from holy orders, there is no church. Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, while yet prefect of the Congregation of the Doctrine of Faith, now dicastery, who was later coronated Pope Benedict XVI, stated on multiple occasions, both by pen and word, there is no church without the hierarchy and the Eucharist. There is no church. There is a tendency in today's church, among Catholics, in the Western world especially, to ignore the magisterium. In fact, I know personally certain laymen who have blogs and certain priests, Catholic priests, who are openly disobeying both the teaching office of the Pope and the magisterium, which is the expression of the hierarchical church. And once you do that, you sever yourself from the church. You are not part of the Catholic Church anymore. Whether you know it or not, you're not. Okay? This is important. The virtue of obedience. I spoke about this virtue on several occasions, both in Italian, in French, in Spanish, in English, and several occasions, and both in the States and in Europe. Actually, more than just Europe. I spoke of it also in the 7 continents of the planet over the last 32 years. And one of the standout virtues, quintessential virtue, in fact, after charity, is obedience. But we must understand what obedience is, okay? There are many different interpretations of obedience, and not all of them comply with that which the church teaches, with sacred scripture teaches, with what sacred tradition teaches, okay? And we have to understand really what obedience is. Obedience is mentioned in Gaudium et Spes of the Second Vatican Council document. Let's start with Gaudium et Spes, in particular at number 17, and then number 79. The Second Vatican Council document, Gaudium et Spes, states, and I will also quote from the encyclical, Veritatis Splendor, from Pope John Paul II after Gaudium et Spes. Gaudium et Spes, number 17, states that human dignity requires man to act through conscious and free choice, as motivated and prompted personally from within, and not through blind moral internal impulse or merely external pressure. Man achieves such dignity when he frees himself from all subservience to his feelings and in a free choice of the good pursues his own end by effectively and assiduously marshaling the appropriate means. Okay. Now, what I wish to emphasize in the statement is that obedience does not come from any external pressure, but from a free human choice done with conscientiousness and from within through an internal but not blind impulse. Now, the encyclical Veritatis Splendor by Pope John Paul II, numbers 41 and 42, which was issued in 1993, adds, obedience to God is not, as some would believe, a heteronomy, as if the moral life were subject to the will of something all-powerful, absolute, extraneous to man, and intolerant of his freedom. What is he saying here? John Paul II here is stating, no one can force the human will. It's your free choice to accept and comply with that which your conscience dictates, illuminated by scripture, tradition, and the church. He later articulates these 3 sources that help form the conscience, namely scripture, tradition, and magisterial teachings, which is the church. But for now, let me limit myself to add what he states here, which is a heteronomy of morality. If this were to mean a denial of man's self-determination or the imposition of norms unrelated to his good, this would be in contradiction to the revelation of the covenant and of the redemptive incarnation. Such a heteronomy would be nothing but a form of alienation contrary to divine wisdom and to the dignity of the human person. Okay, here the Pope is stating that obedience is not a militaristic heteronymous obedience, namely, you do what you're told without asking when or why, you just do and die. This is not what the church teaches. The church teaches you must refer to your conscience, the internal forum, but not only to your conscience. And this is where most Catholics today are deceived. And I say carefully, most Catholics are deceived. If you don't believe me, look at the statistics. The statistics do not lie. Well over 75% of Catholics in the United States, in all the Western countries, do not listen to the church's teachings. They do not go to communion. They do not go to confession. They do not care about what the Pope says or what the church's magisterium instituted by Christ says. This is over 75% of Catholics. Statistics do not lie. And what is the collateral effect of this defection of the faith? Prophesied by Paul in the second letter to the Thessalonians, when he said that the man of iniquity, the Antichrist, cannot come unless there is first a defection of the faith, a falling away of Catholics from the true faith. That's happened already. And that's happening today. And it is happening even among those on websites and talk shows who are deceiving en masse, say the faithful, promoting a false doctrine. There are many false doctrines being promoted today because of their disobedience to the Pope. The same people who condemn papal teachings, who condemn the magisterium and the Vatican's teachings, are now promoting alien invasions, all this rubbish that comes from Satan. I can tell you as an exorcist that these people are deceived by demons, fallen angels, that's right. They say that aliens are demons, some of these individuals. They are deceived by demons. Why is that? Because they themselves are not obedient to that which Christ, the conqueror of demons, instituted to guide us in the knowledge of the truth, which is sacred scripture, sacred tradition, and their articulation through Christ's mystical body expressed by the hierarchy that he instituted, the magisterium. On the contrary, these very individuals who put out this false narrative to deceive the masses, it's not just the false teaching of all aliens or demons, which is rubbish, which has been contradicted flatly by the magisterium, but they don't care about the magisterium, and they tell you don't listen to the magisterium either, deceiving you in their diabolical wake. It extends also to church-approved literature, like the writings of the servant of God, Luisa Picaretta, that has deceived even priests. I know a fallen away priest who is constantly condemning Luisa's writings, but nobody really listens to him anyway because he's severed himself from the church. And then you have these others who are condemning priests. There's this priest from Medjugorje who's condemning Luisa's writings. You know what? The funny thing about all these dissident individuals in the church have in common? You know what the funny thing about these individuals is and that they have in common? They don't know a lick of the word of the language Italian. How can someone condemn the writings of a pious, obedient woman, namely Luisa? Now, the church has given her the official title, Servant of God, and has given the green light for her beatification to go ahead so that she may be canonized. How can these individuals openly, publicly, go against the magisterium that has given the green light to Luisa's cause, that has appended many of its seals to several of her works, namely the Imprimatur, the Nihil Obstat, that have been given multiple times to her Hours of the Passion, to the Blessed Virgin Mary in the Kingdom of the Divine Will book, to another work produced by one of her spiritual directors, to whom she was always obedient, namely Father Benedict Calvi. How can these priests and lay people openly go against what the church is teaching? Because they are among the majority who have defected from the faith in this rebellion that precedes the Antichrist. They are deceived by the devil and they don't even know it. And I speak as an exorcist who worked under Father Amor for many years. Yes, the devil even can deceive the elect. Says it in the book of Revelation, says it in the Gospel of Matthew. Even the elect will be deceived. So obedience, when understood in its proper expression, which is articulated by the magisterium, is that which is embraced in conformity with scripture, tradition, magisterial teaching, meaning church teaching, so that we may be set free from our own subjective opinions that deviate from obedience to Christ. Article 79 of Gaudium et Spes, Vatican document, states the Council wishes, above all else, to recall the permanent binding force of universal natural law and its all-embracing principles. Man's conscience itself gives ever more emphatic voice to these principles. Therefore, actions which deliberately conflict with these same principles, as well as orders commanding such actions, are criminal. and blind obedience cannot exercise those who yield to them. So here, the Vatican's document from the Council is stating that unless your conscience is properly formed by the Church, which embraces sacred scripture and sacred tradition, you will adhere to a false teaching, a false narrative that will mislead you from the source of truth, even under the veil of a blind adherence to this teaching. Let me take an extreme example. Someone tells you, I'm going to go back to the alien myth that is being promoted by unauthorized teachers. Oh yes, one more thing I wish to share with you about these people that are condemning Louisa's writings, or another group that is condemning the Church's position on the possibility of extraterrestrial life. There's this little group, I can count them on one hand, of individuals that are made up of priests and laity, and they're openly condemning the magisterium. They're condemning the Vatican spokesperson, Monsignor Corrado Balducci, who represents the voice of the Holy See. They're condemning him. They're condemning the words of Padre Pio Pietrelcina, who spoke about the reality of extraterrestrial life. Again, this is not Father Joseph talking to you. This is me sharing what the Church and saints teach. And what the saints teach, as I share with you, corroborates what the magisterium teaches. They contradict what the Vatican priest of the Vatican Observatory stated, Father Jose Funes, and his successor, Brother Guy Cosolmano, and many other sources, including cardinals and bishops and church fathers, by giving you a false narrative that you must believe. And here's where they deceive you. They try to make you blindly obey, which God never does. And this is what reveals their dishonesty. They will convince you, try to convince you, not allow you to choose freely with a free conscience from two possibilities, which the Church does here. They will say, no, all aliens are demons, and there's no other way. This right there, that approach, forcing you to want to think one way, is a dishonest approach. Why do I say that? Because the Church leaves you open to accept it. See, the Church, like Christ, does not force you. These individuals reveal their true nature when they try to force you. Listen to the way they talk. They'll say things with respect to extraterrestrial life, which the Vatican is open to accept and ready to prepare a theology on, which I've already done, and I've shared with people on the internet already, citing Vatican sources over the past 2,000 years, including saints and fathers and doctors and bishops and cardinals, etc., all agreeing that yes, even Saint Hannibal de Francia said, even Jesus Christ told Louisa that God created millions and millions of worlds, okay? Now, apart from all these sources I'm sharing paraphrasingly, God and the Church never force you to believe this way or the highway. But when you hear these other people preaching, all the aliens are demons, not only do they contradict Scripture, but they contradict the Church's approach to revealing all the truth to you. Okay? Why do they contradict Scripture? Because angels do not have bodies. This is a teaching of the Church. It's a doctrine. Okay? It's not an option. It's a doctrine. It's something that doesn't change. You're not forced to believe it. That's up to you. But the teaching doesn't change. Okay? Angels do not have bodies. They do not need physical craft to travel. These beings that have entered our solar system, according to Father Jose Funes and others, and even according to the recent disclosure of the government, U.S. government, showing that, yes, we have craft that is not of this world, and this has been stated openly, not of this world. Angels do not need craft. They don't have bodies. And yet, these people are stating all aliens are demons. What are demons? They're fallen angels. Fallen angels don't need craft, okay? So what they're preaching is in itself false. Father Monsignor Corrado Balducci, who was an exorcist in Rome, who worked with Father Ranworth, who worked with other exorcists, who's also put out books on demonology, has publicly stated, and I will quote him, "Those who claim that aliens are demons are stating a lie to you." These are not my words. The words of Monsignor Balducci. They are giving you a lie to deceive you. So yes, it's true. There are Catholics today that are preaching this, lay and priests alike. And they are the ones who are deceived by demons by telling you that all angels and the aliens are demons, okay? All right. I wanted to emphasize that parenthetically as a long parenthesis, I know, because some people have been asking me in the last few days to address this because they are scandalized, they told me, by what they heard this priest and these lay people say, contradicting the words of sacred scripture, of saints like Padre Pio, of the magisterium, and so forth. And I have to, as a theologian, and it is my vocation and obligation, reveal to you the truth. And the truth is to stay united with the church's teaching, with these people, which is what these people are not doing. Okay. Now, I understand that these people who are promoting this false narrative, I used only two examples, condemning Louisa's writings, don't know a word of Italian. So don't listen to them. They are not capable of interpreting Louisa's writings because they don't know the original language. It's like me telling you to interpret scripture without you knowing Greek or Hebrew. It's impossible. And I gave you the other example of people condemning the church's official teaching on other issues of obedience and the church's position, present-day position, on the possibility of extraterrestrial life throughout the cosmos, which is positive. And of Monsignor Corrado Balducci, the church spokesperson from the Vatican, saying, yes, you should believe they exist. And they are not demons, as these cracker barrel theologians are claiming. You know what these people have in common that are misleading you? Not one of them is a doctor of theology. Not one of them is qualified by the church to teach theology as a theologian. And yet, Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger put out a document on the vocation of the theologian, whose obligation and vocation it is to preach the truth in love, to inform you of pitfalls promoted by false doctrines, which are out there today, and truths that you should embrace, which are being stifled and silenced by the noise promoted by these who do not listen to church teaching. This is important in these end times because confusion is abounding today as never before in the church. And I don't say this as an opinion, but as a matter of divine revelation approved by the church. There are many contemporary prophetic revelations that have occurred during your and my lifetime, going back to the 60s to today, that the church has acknowledged as free of all error, with its seals of approval, in which Jesus and Mary state that the church today is reigning in more confusion than ever before. Why is that? Again, because of what Paul speaks of in his second letter to the Thessalonians. There is this defection of the faith, this falling away from the faith, on the part of not the non-Catholics and Christians, but on the part of the Catholics and Christians. St. Paul used the word apostasia in his second letter to the Thessalonians, which is that which must precede the appearance of the Antichrist. And the word apostasia in Greek means not a rebellion of the masses, but a falling away of the true faith on the part of Catholics and Christians. That's what apostasia in Greek means. It means a pulling of the ranks, a defection from within, a mutiny, where the majority of Catholics are turning against the church. And that is happening today. And because the internet today is available, the lies they spew is reaching all the ends of the earth. So how are we to avoid being deceived by these false prophets, by these false teachers? And by the way, you will find that these same people who are promoting this false narrative are the same people who promote false seers that have been condemned by the church. Over and over again, they give you, oh, this seer said this seer said that, and within 2-3 years, the Vatican comes out, nope, they're false, nope, they're false. And what do these people do? They attack the church for condemning these false seers. So there's no limit to the rebelliousness, the apostasia in these end times on the part of these false prophets. How do we avoid it? How do we remain faithful? It's very simple. Remember, Satan's approach to deception is predictable. My mentor, Father Ramorth, repeated this many times in his works and in his preaching. He stated that Satan never changes his tactics. He's very predictable. But because he is very convincing, many people are swept away even though he never changes his game plan. And his game plan is to steal your soul for all eternity through smoke and mirrors deception. What does St. Paul say? He can dress himself up as a sheep in wolf's clothing. He can appear as an angel of light, having the odor of sanctity without the sanctity. So beware of these false lay, even clerical preachers, when they disobey the church. When they disobey the church, they are disobeying sacred scripture and sacred tradition. Do not follow these blind guides. This is my stark warning to you. I've said this before, and I will continue to repeat it, always trying to do so, as St. Paul says in his letter to the Ephesians, speaking the truth in love. But the truth has to be spoken.
Well, I guess that is all for the video this time. Again, thanks so much for your time spent here with us, and hopefully all of you have learned a lot from this one. Much love to all of you, and may God bless you.
Because the church, the magisterium, has given the green light for her beatification to go forward, and has already given the seals of approval to several of her works. And the churches and the popes have consistently taught for 2,000 years that anyone, including a priest, who condemns that which the church has approved acts reprehensibly. Again, these are not the words of Father Joseph. These are the words of the Pope and the Magisterium. Or if, let's say, someone representing Zechariah, the Cains in the church, condemns the church's position on the possibility of extraterrestrial life by saying, no, don't listen to the church that is open to this reality and accepts them as being brothers, but calls them all demons. These are the Cains in the church. They are opposing the magisterium. Do not listen to them. They're preaching to you a false gospel, and they're deceiving you. They're already deceived, but don't let them deceive you. Listen to what the church says, not these rogue individuals who do not present what the church teaches, but their own opinions. And it's not just the two examples I give you, it concerns anything the church has preached upon for years. That has not changed. That is preached about, that is touched upon, from ethics to morality, to faith, to morals, to doctrine, to theology, and so forth.